punctuality, eh? You are back whether you like it or not. We have a couple of minutes just to share any ideas that people came up with. In our group, we chose to go into the life skills, the very lively life skills learning community, and noticed a couple of things. There were a couple of postings about like actual skills, like how to do something. I forget actually what it was. I think it was something to do with typing on the typing skills on the computer. We had an idea about bringing in more Aboriginal points of view into it. We had an idea that we're thinking, okay, how do you get learners more engaged? Well, one obvious way is assignments, but then we thought probably this context or this forum isn't the greatest assignment to play. But what we thought of was perhaps the experience of doing a particular assignment might be something that could be posted. Like if I interviewed a World War II veteran, for example, I could take a picture of that and post that and just talk about mention the experience of what that was like, rather than all the content that was needed for the assignment I was doing. Does anybody else want to be a quick spokesperson for your group and tell us if you come up with anything?
I'll pop in quick just because, Mark, we were actually in the same community, and one of the things that we had discussed was having, similar to our introductory videos that we have embedded in that page that all the learners get emailed, like a welcome video to help create that understanding for learners that it is a shared space, that we value their input, it's a place to look for inspiration. And the second one, specific to the career paths, was that it would be nice to have a page or something on that site that is specific to post-secondary and careers, so that it's not kind of mishmashed in, that it's a, select this and you can read and see information about what's happening with post-secondary and such.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like an idea for a whole new learning community, like a post-grad one or something. Great, thank you, Patricia. Anyone else?
I'll say a few words if you want. We had a chance to have a quick run through all of them. So it was pretty quick. The thing we were I think it's mostly me actually, was noticing that it was usually, there wasn't usually that many people. You could see the same names again and again. So we was wondering, okay, how do you make this more than just a course or part of the course? If you're doing it in a different platform, there has to be some advantage to doing it with the platform. And obviously with the communities, you can get outside of people who are just doing that particular course or doing an art course. Things like, let's find a way to get support in the arts community looking in there, people who aren't actually doing an art course. Things like, okay, how do we share links to things and the latest things that have been put in there? Make like a bi-weekly newsletter of, okay, here's the latest stuff that's been posted in all the communities. And even though you're only doing a math course, you can go and look at something in the language arts community, and maybe that will get you interested in one of Miguel's Spanish courses because of what's posted there, and possibly get parents in and get people into those communities who are not doing one of the courses in that community. That's the whole reason for having the community.
Great, thanks, Paul. We have a few more minutes. Anybody else want to jump in?
I can jump in just after Paul, since we're actually in the same group. And this comment is related to a request from Sue Steele. And in the chat box here, Sue was wondering if some of the organizers from the learning area communities, so the cohort leads, have noticed participation with the learners and feedback from learners and increased communication there. And Sue, one thing that I noticed when we were looking in the science community was I actually I posted about our Big Ideas workshop for Biology 11, and I had a learner interested and commented, where can I find more information? How do I sign up? So that was exactly what I was hoping would happen from that post, and what I'd love to see happening more, where learners are reading, things within these communities, not just on a news bulletin, but actively in real time as exciting happenings are occurring within our different programs.
Yeah, and I think, Sarah, just on that, we also have a bunch of new courses that we can potentially be doing with the BC Ed plan, and it occurred to me to possibly throw out almost like a little bit of a survey to learners through the learning communities and say, we're thinking of offering this course. What do you think? And you kind of get a bit of feedback that way too. Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, can I jump in without putting up my hand? And one of the things that I guess I noticed is just to talk about, or for some clarity around the purpose of the groups. Because I think if people were clear, and one of the things that came up in our group, and maybe it was more me pushing this, but if we're clear about what the purpose is, and I see, because I listened to something really interesting on the radio yesterday, had I thought, what's the connection between self-design, learning, myself, the world, and thought this might be a place to land that, I might have come here and tried to, put a link in there to share it with everybody else. So I think just that awareness of what the purpose of it is, and how far out we want people to engage, because there's so many options and so many things people can engage in. I think if it's really clear what what these communities can do, it might help people find a place into them, and they could see their place in it.
Yeah, and on that point, Michelle, the part of the idea came out of our noticing that the forums within our courses don't necessarily get a lot of interactive activity. Learners post things in there, and the hope was that they would be reacting to each other's work, which doesn't necessarily, I think in some courses it does, and in other courses it hasn't. And the learning communities were kind of an idea that came out of that. And we thought if we separated it out and build it up, loosened the boundaries a little bit just from assignments and whatnot, and built it up as a bigger forum. And yeah, that's sort of where it came from. So it is very open, and I think it's still open to definition as to the direction that it goes in this year. Any other final comments?
Well, Michael Bender had his hand up. I didn't see that when I jumped up there, but Michael had his hand up a way back.
Yeah, I'm just remembering what was successful with K-9 in first class, and when we got learners leading groups and they came up with ideas, and then they got to facilitate with the help of, an LC or an adult of some sort. Those are the groups that had the most interaction going on. That part of this is, I think we're inviting them into our space, and that's what kind of looks and feels to them. And I'm wondering how it might change if it was their space and they were inviting each other, or maybe even us into their space.
Yeah, or like a student-run learning community, almost like a student council-ish kind of thing too, comes to mind.
Yeah, there are a whole host of communities out there. These are the ones that we are moderating, and I think you're exactly right, Michael. In terms of learners putting their voice out there on these communities, it's kind of hard to do, especially when there's so much adultness happening there. However, it's not that it isn't valuable to see that we are contributing, we're thinking of the learners, we're inviting parents to view in and to contribute. So there's still value here. However, in some subjects, I mean, if you look at the arts community, you see emerging artists contributing their works of art to the community, to their peers. And that's really interesting. I just want to screen share one thing, and I know we're running out of time, but just for a little, what Michael was saying, hopefully you guys are seeing my screen here. A Co-Design 10 group from last year created a community called Artist Trading Cards based on a little event that Amber Santos did during a wellness week. And they continue to contribute and actually swap these trading cards by mail and post them up here, kind of like an online auction. And this kind of thing is happening. And it's
Wow.
pretty, yeah, it's pretty great.
What
Super
community is
inspiring.
that in, David?
It's called Artist Trading Cards, and you can find it. You can search for it and join if you want, but I would just, we don't want to have too many adults in here, right? Because then it just kind of ruins the fun for them.
Thanks, David. And we've got Allison and Beth as well. Maybe those will be our last two comments, if possible.
Oh, well, I was going to say what David was saying, that there are some student-led communities. Like there's also one that's social justice, right, David? And the interesting thing, though, you do notice that there's a lot of engagement when it brings in the arts. And so maybe that's something that we could bring into all of our own communities. And how does art and science, you know, how do they come together and really encourage that? Because it's that invitation to be hands-on, physically interpreting something, understand, and finding an expression for it. And just as a suggestion, maybe we could. I definitely know I could do that more. Not the art, but encouraging art in my communities.
I love that. And Beth, did you still have your hand up?
No, Michael said what I wanted to say.
Okay. Perfect. Mark, do you want to wrap anything up with that activity?
No, I think it was great. I really loved how the chat rooms worked. That was just awesome. Thanks, David.
I thought Beth wanted to say something. Oh, no, she got it. Okay. There was one other thing in our group we had taught, and maybe this was mentioned, just a very small thing, but even by clicking the hands or the clap or whatever, what that does is you also get a notification about it and you see it. And there's a double edge to that, because then you look at the notification and think, oh, great, but I don't really need to read it. Or if you've done it, then you think, cool, somebody's noticed what I put up there, and I'm going to go back in and look. So there are little tricks, but.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think this is, this was something we introduced last year. It was a very new concept to us, even as educators, and to our learners. And I think this is really cool that we're carrying it forward, and it'll continue to evolve. And hopefully engagement will continue to increase as well. So thanks everyone, and I hope that opened up your horizons to be like, oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening out here, and start to think maybe about what you'd like to contribute. And you don't have to be teaching within that that learning community, like Paul said. Go into a completely random one and maybe challenge yourself to share something. Or draw something, and enjoy that. So we're switching gears here. We do like to try and have a little activity at least once a day, so that we do get a little bit of time together. But let me just take a look back at our agenda. We're switching gears, and we're only about 5 minutes behind, so I'd still consider that on time almost. Moving into our activation processes for this year. So just to kind of take a step back. And maybe everyone can even take a deep breath. Sometimes it feels like these days kind of zip from topic to topic. A nice, deep, sweet, long, focused breath. And if we remember, our topic for the day is looking at our organization. And so far, we've kind of got a nice idea of who is who, of what is happening, what is emerging, what is working on, what we are working on. And how do we get involved? So now we're actually getting more into the specifics of some changes in our organization this year that we'll interact with as educators. So I believe am I starting this off, passing the baton to you, Dan? If it's not you, you can tag someone else off here.
Well, I think it goes to Vanessa first and then to me.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We can pass the hat around a few times during this conversation. So off to you, Vanessa.
Thanks, Sarah. That's great. And welcome to a few more folks who have dropped in since the break and who were invited to come in at this time for this topic specifically. I see that Todd and Clarissa have made it. Megan has made it. Susan dropped in a bit before the break. Darcy Kay is here too. Have I missed any? Carrie, did you make it? Are you in? I think you're in here now. So thanks everyone for coming. This section I'm going to hand off to Dan pretty quick because quite soon here we're going to be getting into what our new activation kind of window is going to look like this year. And related to that, right at the beginning, is our new spreadsheets for mentors specifically who are working on those, and it's all tied together. But I wanted to mention this piece first, and I hope that people have kind of gone in and looked around, watched Paul's fantastic video. Thank you, Paul, for that. And for making all the spreadsheets. Paul creates all of those, and now he has handed them to me, and you might notice that your spreadsheet is not quite complete yet. The reflection of how many learners and your contract size and all of that isn't on there yet. That will be coming this week. So those spreadsheets will be ideally fully ready to go as we begin next week or sooner. In there, in Paul's video, there are some instructions or some. He makes reference to the new activation window of time that we're looking at this year. We're going to go deeper into that when we talk about CAT after Dan does his part. But essentially this year, we're really shortening how we're supporting learners to get from their registration in the course to actually being active and engaged in the course. And really, in some ways, this isn't a lot different from where we have been trying to go, at least this past year, where we first started working with the CAT processes of, first you email your learner, and then you call them, and then, you submit a CAT ticket. Well, that wasn't happening entirely consistently for a whole variety of reasons, not the least of which is how much we care about our learners and how much we are connecting with them and building relationship and recognizing, there are several reasons why you might not be ready, or, things like that. Or on the other hand, we've been trying to further develop our learners' capacity to really stay connected to us through the proper channels. So get their emails in the proper places and find where to get support through the support site and things like that. So all of those activities and events have been building up to us trying to get into this zone that has us working with activated learners sooner. And as many of you know, our activated learners are actually the ones that we're paid for by the ministry. So in really practical terms, we're also trying to shorten the amount of time our educators are spending doing work not in a non-educator role, which is basically just the role of, it is an educator role too, that kind of role of cheerleader of, okay, it's time. How can I engage you in this way? How about this? Can I support you that way? That's all important as the role of an educator too, but not for 6 months out of the 1 year that they might be in the course. We really want to make sure that we're getting our learners going and we're getting the funding that we need in order to continue our work with them. The shortened activation window this year also reflects what happens everywhere else in our program. So talking about coherence in the K-9 program and in SE, the learners have, SE is starting this week specifically because they sort of pulled back from the start date of September 6th that a lot of us use next week in order to leave a little bit more time to get into that activation phase of the learning year so that everybody can be listed as active for the September 30th 1701 count. So there's a bunch of kind of those reasons as well. So when we get into the CAT conversation that's coming after Dan talks, Dan's going to take us through the rest of the process of when we first get a learner and what happens with them, and then I'll jump back in at the end and we'll talk a little bit about what happens if the learner doesn't activate in this time and what's new there, because there is a bunch of new stuff there. So yeah, if you're ready to roll, Dan, I'll pass to you and you can pass back to me with a little bit of time left to talk about CAT. So it's 11:30. Oh gosh, we have lots of time actually. Go Dan.
Thanks, Vanessa. Okay, so I'm going to touch on a few things here. Most of these things will be, there'll be more detail for you about all of these pieces in our newly to be published SDH Educator Guide. And the guide will have quite a bit of detail. So, you know, if you have questions, just know that they'll be answered by the guide. We're going to start with the welcome emails. And so the welcome email is going to change a little bit this year to reflect some of the changes that we have made to the courses and to our policies in terms of activation. So I'm just going to share that here in the chat. It's a link to the welcome. The important parts of the changes to the welcome emails are that basically, I mean, what the important parts of the welcome email in general are, you're letting the learner know that they need to set up a meeting with you right away. And you should send out your welcome email pretty much as soon as you see the learner in your spreadsheet, as soon as you can. So it's really important to check your spreadsheet on a regular basis. One of the changes that we have this year is that the learner can start the course before meeting with you. They can do everything up to the learner checkpoint, the learning checkpoint, which was previously called the learner mentor check-in. So it's basically, it's the exact same thing as the learner mentor check-in previously was. And so you want to make sure that the learners know that they can start the course and get up to that point before they meet with you. So that's in the new welcome letter. You need to, of course, include dates and times in your welcome letter. That's an important piece that you might meet with your learner. It also mentions that the learners must complete their activation agreement as soon as possible. Now, the activation agreement is another piece that's new, and we'll take a look at that in a second. And you can still use your own welcome emails. I want everyone to know that, but we're encouraging you to look through the template very closely and find pieces that might be missing from your current welcome email. And also, please refrain from adding too much information that's not in the welcome email that we have as a template, because learners will be oriented in other ways as well, and we don't want to confuse them with too much information. The next piece I want to talk about is the learner portraits, and I'm going to share a link to the learner portrait document also in our chat here.
Can you share your screen as well, Dan, just so it's on the recording?
Oh yeah, for sure. Let's see if I have the learner portrait handy. There it is right there. So I'll share screens. Huh. For some reason, there it is. It's not reacting as quickly as I would like. And can everybody see that now? Can you see that okay, David, the learner portrait? Okay,
Yeah,
awesome. So the learner portrait was, I was originally asked to develop this as a way for SCC and IC to communicate with mentors about learners in a way that would just, you know, support a deeper understanding of who these learners are and the kinds of support that they might need. And so I'll try to speak a little more loudly here. So the learner portrait is, you know, as you can see, it's a Google spreadsheet, and you would just basically an SEC or HiC would fill these out, and they would tell you some important things. And some of the important things that we would cover in a learner portrait is that that, you know, basically who would you contact, who would be most helpful to contact for a meet and greet, and if it's a different person, who is the most, you know, the best person to contact if communications break down with a learner, what are the adaptations and considerations for this learner, and some things about the learner's progress style and communication style and the kinds of knowledge they have around Moodle are in this document, all those drop downs. And another piece are the passions and interests of that learner. So the passions are really, you know, and David was the inspiration for this passions part. And everybody actually, a lot of people contributed to this document. So it's really a collaborative effort. But, you know, what do learners like to do when they're not working on schoolwork? and interests. These include like ways that learners communicate and the ways they like to intake information. So it's a really about input and output. And then also this little piece at the bottom, I like, what is the learner's favorite school subject and what is their least favorite school subject? And the reason I like this is because the answers I've gotten so far to favorite school subject have invariably been English. So yay, English. And so that's the learner portrait. Now, we realize that all learners could benefit from these portraits, so it's not going to be an exclusively support ed piece anymore. It will be generally for the SEC or the. I'm not too sure about GM. That's up to Allison, and I'm not
Yes,
sure.
for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Right on. That's great.
I was just going to say that it will be great for GMs to fill out as much of this as they can. This is a process of slowly bringing this in, out of only an SE, right, and into the whole, being inclusive of everybody. So GMs are for sure in a position to help fill this out.
Oh, that's great. And I think, you may find, like, it's a good thing to look for the learner portrait when you're doing a meet and greet before you meet with them, because you'll get a bunch of really great information from the learner. It may be a good jumping off point for having some conversations with that learner about, about their likes and stuff, and maybe breaking the ice a bit. You might be able to say, how was the ski season last year if they're really into skiing, or, how was, rock climbing last summer or something like that, right? And I also kind of want to point out that if you look for a learner portrait and you don't find one, you might decide to start one with the learner. You could, if you have enough time in a meet and greet, if you feel confident. You don't have to, there's no requirement, but I'm just suggesting it because it might also be a really great icebreaker and a way to start a conversation happening with the learner. So,
Excuse me, Dan, there's just a bit of questioning about where this lives again. If you could just repeat that.
Oh yeah, hey, thanks for that. I didn't mention that. This will be on the community site. It'll be available under the workspace in the learner docs section. So, and if you want to make one, that's where you go, and then you just click on the plus sign like you would for making any of the documents in there. Okay. The next piece I'm going to touch on are the meet and greet guidelines. I'm going to touch on this very briefly, and I really want to refer people to and I'll stop screen sharing here, this piece. Let's see here.
And before you add on there, Dan, the questions are kind of flying out. We might as well just cover them as they come in, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. So there was one from Michelle and one from Miguel in the chat box.
Yeah, so the intention is it would be regularly updated, and when you actually create one, you should put the year here that it was done. And for SECs and high Cs and GMs, there's a little checkbox here you can check, and it should be checked by SECs and high Cs during the 3 review sessions that we have with our learners. And for anybody else, I mean, we'll just see whether or not it was checked or not, and we'll be able to tell how long ago it was created. Here's the date area here, and that way we'll know how relevant the information is to that learner, and we may open it up and even ask them whether or not some of that stuff is still relevant to them. That might be a good way to do it. And let's see here. Will the mentors have editing abilities so they can add in? It's a template. So what you're going to want to do is when you create it in the community site, it will automatically give you editing privileges, as the mentor should. Anyways, I'm pretty sure that's how the community site is set up. And then,
sorry, Dan, I didn't hear what you said because kind of the sound went off at that moment. Can you repeat?
Yeah, for sure. So you should automatically have editing privileges, Miguel.
Dan, if I can just
so if I
sharing with course mentors as opposed to the person who created it as well.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. I see what you're saying. Well, I think that might be a question for David or for IT, because I'm not too sure how the sharing privileges are set up.
This is how it works. Actually, I'm just going to screen share because I think visual will help everybody. Oh, you'll have to unscreen share, Dan.
Yeah, I'm having
Okay.
My Zoom is acting really strange, and it won't. I'm trying to open it up to a full window so that I can have access to those controls. but it's not opening.
When you're on screen share, go to the top, and there's a tiny little bar that appears, and then there's options, and then you can. It gets a little bit weird when you're in screen share. It's trying to maximize your window. What I'll do, I'll just explain this. In Learner Docs, those templates, if they're created properly, by clicking the plus button and then the new button, if the learner doesn't have one, it will automatically adjust the sharing settings according to who the active SEC, High C, or course mentors are, plus the parents, and it will adjust it. As those courses get closed off, those other course mentors will no longer have access, and new course mentors will be added as they have access. So that'll always be updated. You don't actually ever have to click share and share it to somebody else, because it'll always use the planner to keep that updated. And it updates every time the learner logs into the community site, it re-updates all of those permissions.
But my question, David, is whether, if I create a learner portrait for a learner because I am the SEC, will the math mentor be able to go into that document and edit and change the document?
Yeah, that's the current setting, okay, is, I believe, the way we have it, and we could change it. We could say only guiding mentors and consultants have editing rights and everyone else has commenting rights. But I think there's a potential benefit of, if something needs to be added for this, like this is about getting to know the learners. So if there's relevant information to be added, it should be added, including the learner. Add it.
I have a question as well. It kind of touches on a few things in the chat box as well. But so I understand that SECs are most of the time creating these. I'm not so clear on the comments that came in about guiding mentors maybe creating them and when that would be appropriate. So maybe we can clear that up. But my biggest question was, will we be notified when learners have a learner portrait? Is there like a plus Sarah Bresnahan, check this out function that we'll be, notified with? Or is that an expectation now that every one of our SE learners will be coming to us with a learner portrait? As a course mentor this year is why I'm asking the question.
Right, yeah, and okay, so essentially if you're a learner that's in the Support Ed program, then you have an SEC or a High C. And if that person, if you're also in a GM course, then that person will also be your GM. So that kind of collapses the responsibilities in terms of who's going to fill these out. But if you have a GM and you're not in the Support Ed program, then of course the GM would be responsible. So that's how those responsibilities kind of filter down. But in terms, and then what was your other question, Sarah? It was about, I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, and I was just actually making a comment in the comment box. Some of our GM learners in the online virtual classroom programs like co-design have an SEC and a GM. So there is an overlap sometimes. My second question though was looking at how we will be notified when it is created. So if we are a course mentor to that learner.
Okay, yeah. So basically the way that works is that, well, first of all, we don't have, I won't say we have some really hard and fast policies yet about all of these things, but I would say if the SEC or the High C they're being encouraged to fill these out right now. So I'm not saying that you'll find one for every learner that's in Support Ed, but I'm hoping that will be the case. And then that person, it is one of their responsibilities then to share that with the mentors and to know who the mentors are for that learner. So if you're a mentor and you have a learner that's in Support Ed and you can't find a filled out learner portrait for that learner, you might just, gently remind the SEC or the High C or the GM, hey, or just mention to them, hey, would you mind, filling out a learner portrait? I would really like to see a little bit more about, learn a little bit more about this person and how I might best contact them. Because this is a newly integrated piece, it's just kind of making its way into policies and procedures. If you're a GM who has a learner whose learner also has an SEC or High C, and you look at the learner portrait and you don't see that it's filled out by the SEC or High C, then by all means, go for it, fill it out. You'll probably have a really good conversation with that learner about a bunch of different things that you might otherwise not even touch upon, and it'll be really informative for you.
Awesome. We've got a hand here from Heather as well, if it's a good time.
Yeah, my question was, what about learners? I have two questions. Learners who don't have self-design as their school of record, so if they only have 1 or 2 courses with self-design, do they get one of these? And then also, is there any way to, when it comes time for Wellness Week, to link the Wellness Week document? That's a similar document that lots of people are commenting on. Can we link that into the learner portrait so that we can just access those things easily?
Yeah, so you're kind of cutting out a bit during that. Would you mind repeating your question?
Okay, 2 questions. So one is this learner portrait for all learners, even learners who are only taking 1 or 2 courses with self-design? And then the other question is, can we link it to the Wellness Week document somehow?
Okay, first question. Yeah, it could be used for anybody. And in that case, if a learner only has 1 or 2 courses, they don't have a GM with self-design, and probably, generally won't have I think they would never have an SEC or IC either. So, I mean, at that point, if you wanted to, as the mentor, and this learner's coming into your course, you could create one of these documents and fill it out, and that would be totally okay, and might be a great way to spend your time connecting with that learner in your course. Now, you may find that you don't have time to do that during the meet and greet, and that's okay. It's not your responsibility, but it is potentially something that you might do. And yeah, so just know that that's out there. That's a tool that you can use. And then, can we link it to the wellness snapshots? Well, I mean, it's going to live in the same part of the community site as the wellness snapshot, essentially. So the links are available from the same place. So there isn't. I don't know if that would really be important to do or not, but if you really want to, you could, I guess. If you're, working with a wellness snapshot and you really want to add it in there, I don't think it would hurt anything.
Such great questions, and I know we're really drilling a new program with all the questions we can come up with. So thank you for answering them so well, Dan. We've got 2 more questions on the line here, Beth and then Allison.
Oh, okay, Beth.
Hey, Dan. Thanks. I just had a thought here from my high C perspective role. It might be helpful to be able to link in the ILP into that document so that we'd be able to view it right there. All that information would be in one place for that SEC learner, or the SE learner, excuse me. Because I know from the high C perspective, I was having trouble sharing that ILP with course mentors just because of the way that the sharing was set up by IT, and I don't know if that's changed now. I know we had to download it and share it as a PDF, and there was all this, but if it was linked right into that document, then only the mentors that had that learner, as David was explaining at that time, would be able to see that ILP, and then it would all be in one place. And it would probably save time for the HIC or SEC also.
Well, the sharing settings would be separate on the ILP from what I understand. And so if you connected it here, it wouldn't necessarily, and then you shared this document, it wouldn't necessarily automatically share the ILP. So that might be something you still want to go into. And I'm not sure how they're going to do the sharing settings this year. It could be different. And of course, we'll have all different ILPs. So if the sharing settings are set so that the SECs have control of them, or the high Cs, then we'll still be able to go into the sharing settings and generate a notification with a link that shares it with a particular mentor. So, but if you want to, if you really want to put the link in, you could. And if you want to share it separately, you could do both of them, I guess. And then you can just put the link down here in the comments notes section at the bottom of the, I'm sorry you can't see my screen, but in the comments notes section that's at the bottom of the learner portrait.
Okay. Sounds like it might be more complicated than what it's worth.
Well, I just wanted to jump in. Dan, you're doing a great job fielding all these questions, but this the ILPs have very strict sharing restrictions. And so if you remember a very lively Mentor Lounge conversation that Dan sparked about what is it that mentors need to know before they meet their learner or would like to know, this is kind of what was part of all of that, kind of driving that. And it's not that mentors actually want to be flipping through an ILP anyways. It's just that we need to know if there are modifications already set out for them. You know, that's a good thing to have up front.
Yeah, and again, we should probably move forward, but I want to field, so I'm not going to field any more questions or answers except for from Allison here. I'll take that last one from Allison.
Oh, you know, it's really okay. All I was going to say is that this is really very, very fresh, especially that it's moving, the learner portrait is moving outside of SE. So we will, over the next little while, be creating processes and protocol, and we'll make sure that's in the mentor guide. And there'll be more time for questions later that, of course, we want to hear. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, thanks, Allison.
I just want to interrupt and say, Chris, just for some reason you may have hit screen sharing, so we're watching your screen. So just to be careful. I'm trying to get there before anything gets shared that you didn't want us to see.
Nice catch.
So the next piece is the meet and greet guidelines, and so I'm just going to briefly share the guide with you here, all here, and let's see if I can do that screen share thing again.
Chris, oh, there we go. Okay, got it. Awesome.
Okay, where did it go? Oh, there it is. So let's do that now. Share screen. Here you go. And I want to share. Is that the right one? Can you see that, Michelle? The SDH Educator Guide?
I see activation processes discussion, Dan.
Oh, that's the wrong window. Well, let me move things around here.
Okay.
There we go. I have too many screens.
Take note. We should take
note
of what we have up on our screens just in case this kind of thing happens when you decide to. Especially with learners.
Oh yeah, I know. My screens are all really happy screens with nice little bunnies and stuff. I'm not worried. And yeah, so let's see. All right, so let's see. This is the guide here, and essentially this is the guide that you'll be referring to and stuff when we get to that point where we have everything completely ironed out and we're really close and it's almost there. And then you'll be able to come here and have all of your questions answered, hopefully. And if you don't, then you could email someone and ask them. And Anita's a good person to contact regarding this kind of stuff. And you might also ask me just to take some of the load off Anita, or Allison will know. So there's some people that you could ask about these things. And so
Dan, I'm still seeing the activation processes. I'm not sure if everyone else is. I can't see the guide yet, though.
No, it's still the meet and greet guidelines.
Oh, yeah, that's weird. Okay.
Hey, Dan, just try dragging your other Google document on top of wherever this one is, and then it should be showing.
Yeah. Well, can you see it now?
No.
What's going on? I've tried every screen now. That's all.
You know what? You probably shared the exact tab, and so it's locked onto that. So just start over again.
Oh, gee. Okay.
It was following that document wherever you put it.
I've never used screen share in Zoom before, so I'm a little clumsy. So I apologize for that. I'll get better, I promise.
Yeah,
okay, let's get the screen again, and we'll see if I can get the right one this time. And yeah, here it is, right here. There we go. And okay, you can probably see it now, right?
You got it. Look at that.
Awesome. Thanks. Round of applause for me. And all right, so yes, the educator guide. And now let me find other pieces that I need. All right, so that's the guide. And wow, I'm shuffling here. And so basically the important pieces in terms of the meet and greet guidelines, which I do want to refer you to the guide for that. So I'll just briefly kind of scroll through the guide here so you can take a look at it. Sue's part on learner portraits, where we've already discussed that. Here you'll find the meet and greet guidelines, which are not complete yet, but which are very close. And you'll find other pieces in here too. You'll find some mentions of our platforms and the various uses for our platforms. Here's activation processes. We'll have a whole piece on that. The things I want to touch on really briefly here in terms of what we're going to be doing and what the changes are in our meet and greets are, that we're giving learners now 3 weeks, a 3-week limit to activate the course. That means they have to get through all the activation activities and fill out the learning checkpoint, and they also have to do the activation agreement, which the activation agreement will come first, and the activation agreement will let them know that they have only 3 weeks to do this. Another thing they have to do is they have to meet with you during that first 3 weeks. Now, they don't have to meet with you before they do all of those activation activities. We should be really clear also in our welcome letters, as I said before, that they know that they can get started on those right away. And maybe sometime then during that 3 weeks, whenever you set an appointment with them, they will meet with you and you'll complete that piece. And so, yeah, they have 3 weeks to meet with you and complete everything up to the learning checkpoint, and they'll know that because of the activation agreement. So those are the pieces I want to communicate to you right now.
Dan, then, can I add an underline for that?
Yes.
Well, because this has been a conversation for almost for a good while, for six weeks or the last 6 months, about how to have relationship with learners, let them activate in their own time, and not have mentors doing work chasing, and activating in a timely fashion so that we can apply for funding. And I just want to kind of say, do a shout out that what we're trying to do is see, can we meet all 4 of those goals, and I'm sure there's more, at the same time. So in one thing, can we let kids get going right away if they want to, but not lingering courses on mentor spreadsheets, and really get them to the point where they're actually getting themselves to activation on their own before we start engaging them with them. So you're not spending sometimes weeks, months. I know people who have spent many, many hours, and at the end the learner never activated enough for funding. So I just want to thank everybody who's really, wrestled around with this one. And we just need to be really awake and aware and giving feedback. Is this working? We'll see, hopefully we'll see, but we want anecdotal feedback that will also help to go with the numbers. So, hopefully that's what you're being presented with is, something that we think are meeting all those different elements.
Yeah, that's really important. Thanks for adding that, Michelle. And of course, after I'm done here, we'll talk about what to do, I think, if that 3-week timeline isn't met. I think that's the next piece. But, and the last piece I want to talk about are some of the adjustments to Moodle. So I'm going to share again, and everyone keep their fingers crossed for me that my sharing works this time. Share screen. And
can I invite Heather? She has a hand up just about learners not responding, and that would fit in right before you jump to Moodle, Dan.
Thanks for bringing that forward. Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah. My question is just after the initial email that you send out, it's like then 2 weeks and you do a CAT request if you don't hear, like you email them the first week, call them the second week, and you don't have any, you don't hear from them at all. They're not doing work in the course. They haven't responded to you at all. So then it's CAT takes it from there. Is that like how quickly we're trying to make the turnaround?
Kat is next in our list of people who are talking today. So can we maybe Google that?
If I can interject, as I understand it, Heather, but before sending a CAT, if the learner's in the SE program, your next step is to contact the SEC.
Okay, right. So that's another week. Like, my concern is that it's just such a quick timeline to imagine 3 weeks. It often takes me 3 weeks to set up the meet and greet. Like, I'm still connecting, I'm still engaging with the learner each week, but it takes that long to figure out our timing and for them to get their password and everything.
And Heather, that's something that's new this year, is that, that they can get into the course without meet and greet. So I think that's going to come. So hold your question and see if it gets answered, but I think you're going to find the answer coming down the pipe.
Right, thank you.
Yep. Thanks. Yeah, and and I know there'll probably be more questions as things develop too, but I just want to show you this last part here, which is what do the courses look like now? What do the start of the courses look like now? Because this is a new thing, and all of the self-paced courses now have these changes in them. So you'll find at the start of every course, there are 2 new topics. There's a getting started topic, and there's an activate your learning topic. Now, in the getting started topic, you'll find some of the pieces we've been talking about and some of the pieces that were previously in the course. You'll find the meet and greet here, which is, this is where you'll be submitting the meet and greet essentially that you did with the learner. You'll find the authentic work and tutor use declaration, which will be important during the meet and greet or before the meet and greet. Hopefully they'll have that filled out. You have to make sure they have. You'll find the activation agreement, which the learner agrees to complete up to the learning checkpoint and contact you for a meeting within the first 3 weeks. You'll also find the course outline. That's a piece we've had before, the learning outcomes, the course timeline, which will be discussed later. You'll also find the automatic scheduler, which is frequently used during the meet and greet to generate a proposed schedule for the learner in terms of getting each assignment done on a calendar. And then you'll find this activate your learning piece. Now this is maybe slightly different in different courses depending on the course. In some courses, the learning checkpoint was partway through topic 1 previously. So what's been done is these pieces have been moved up into an activate your learning topic, and then it's just been called activate your learning. In some cases, you'll see it's called activate your learning, and in brackets, you might see topic 1, or you might see, sorry, reading and viewing part 1, and then this might be topic 1, reading and viewing part 2. In other cases, the learning checkpoint was at the very end of the first topic, and so this activate your learning might just be a single topic. It might be activate your learning topic 1, reading and viewing, say. The reason for that was that if we did it differently, we would have had wide-ranging effects on the numbers that were used. Our numbering conventions per topic would have had to change to match the topic numbers. That would have meant we would have had to change also the course outlines and the automatic scheduler, and it would have led to quite a bit of work. So if you see that, you know, there's a slight difference in how these are arranged in each course, that's why. And yeah, anyways, so those are those pieces. And are there any questions about those? And so, I'm sorry, yeah?
Does it matter if we do the authentic work and tutor use declaration affirmation form in the course itself or the link in the meet and greet document? I know there's 2 different access points. Like, is one different from the other?
They should both go to the same. We merged them. There were 2 last year. There was a request for a shorter form, so kids didn't have to keep filling out that long form all the time. But what was happening is a shorter form got put in a lot of places. So it was kind of shortcutting that whole process. So David merged the 2 so that if you've done it before, it'll skip you through in the form, but it's just one form, so you only have to search one place. And it is such an important document because then you can go back and refer to it. It's like when things are good, they're good, but when they're not, and then you go back and you're like, oh, you didn't do this form. And now we have to talk about what plagiarism is. That's hard. So really to check those forms, they'll all be in one tab. And so now that it should, and the same link to that same form will be everywhere. One form, one place for you to search to confirm that that's been done. And it should be done for every course, because a learner might have a tutor in math, but they don't have a tutor in English. So you just want to know they have a tutor, right? So, you know, hopefully that, great question, Beth, and hopefully that will streamline that process.
Yeah, and just to point this out and reiterate on this, so what a learner will see when they come into a course is they'll see this getting started and activate your learning topics. They'll see those. But until they complete these and do the learning checkpoint, they will not see the rest of the course. It will be hidden from them. And so you should know that. And if learners ask you about it, just be ready to tell them that, yeah, they just have to complete up to the learning checkpoint. Now, when they submit for the learning checkpoint, that's when it'll become available. You don't have to mark it. They don't have to wait for you to mark it before all these other topics become open. They just have to submit, and then these topics will open up to them. So it won't slow them down at all, and they won't be waiting for you. What else did I want to tell you? Oh yes, any of the learners that are in your courses who have completed what was previously called the Learner Mentor Check-In will be checked off for the Learning Checkpoint, because all we did was rename it. So you don't have to worry about learners who have been in the course and filled it out being restricted from the rest of the course suddenly. They'll be okay. And
Dan, can I just throw a comment in?
Yeah.
That actually hasn't been my experience so far. That I've had experiences with people who are who the course disappears for them even though they're in the middle of it. So just to know that that's also true too.
Okay, if that happens, and that might be because of the settings for the Learning Mentor Check-In, or it might be some strange glitch in some of the courses are in Moodle. But if that happens, then just advise your learner to submit something to the Learning Checkpoint. It could be anything, and they will automatically be let into their course.
Just quickly, that's what happened to me in PE 12. I just had to have all of my learners resubmit their learner mentor thing. So and the meet and greet document was gone also. So I had them resubmit the meet and greet document that was already on the drive, just so that everything would still be in place.
Huh. Yeah, I'm wonder about that. I wonder why that happened. I'm not too sure exactly why that happened, but
yeah, I wouldn't worry about it, Dan. But just and for future reference. But
yeah, it's one of those weird Moodle anomalies that you know. Anyway, yeah.
I think if other people are experiencing that, you really just need to maybe email all your learners and just say, if anybody's experiencing this, here's what to do, and it should solve itself really quickly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thanks, Mark. The funding form in Bodhi is exactly the same as last year, so there are some small mercies here, things that haven't changed. So, and that's it. I guess I'm going to hand the baton over to the next person, and I'm not sure who that is.
I can take it, and I actually had a comment as well that I know there's some concern that, okay, they can't see the rest of the course, but it's actually fine because they have a course guide, they have a course timeline, right? They know what's coming. And I think this is a really brilliant step in the right direction. And I know a lot of work has happened in all of the courses with a lot of people helping to make the courses better for this fall session. So thank you to everyone that's contributed with that amount of work. And for kind of defining and cleaning out these systems that we have. I know we really all appreciate it. The course content is also outlined in the course outline, yes. So I do see a few hands here. I just have about 4 more minutes before I'd like to pass the baton on to Vanessa and our CAT team. So I'm not sure whose hand went up first. I have Heather and John. Why don't we just go in that order? And Malcolm after that.
Thanks for keeping an eye on that, Sarah. I'm finding it hard to coordinate the screen shares and the talking with the chat. So I
got your back. I got your back.
You're awesome.
So
Heather, John, Malcolm.
Thanks. My question is about the agreement, the activation agreement. Is that something, is a vision, like, I like the wording and the language in the educator guide about that I am agreeing, like as a mentor agreeing to do something and the learners are agreeing to do something. Is that a conversation that should be had in the meet and greet? Like, I really like how we're both agreeing and then we do it together. We know what's coming up and we know what we've agreed to.
Well, the activation agreement should be filled out by the learner before you even have your meet and greet. That's pretty much the first thing that they should do, and it's mentioned in the welcome letter.
Okay.
However,
before the meet and greet. Okay.
Yeah, but having said that, Heather, if you want to bring it up during the meet and greet, it can't hurt to emphasize what their agreement is and what your part of that is. You know. One of the things that we're saying in that is that mentors agree to be curious about learners and their learning, and so you might want to say what that means. You know, you may and actively even just demonstrate it during the meet and greet.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, and the next person is
Hi, can you hear me?
Hey, John.
How's it going?
Great.
Okay. My question is about the activation process. Can a student do the first initial assignments and then just carry on? They don't need to check in with you?
No, you still have to have that meet and greet. Is that what you're asking? You still have to have a meet and greet. It just they can start the assignments without meeting with you first. The way it's worded.
John, why would that be?
Sorry?
They just have to do both they just have to do both the meet and greet and the first few assignments up to Activate Your Learning in the first 3 weeks. What order that happens in will vary from learner to learner, probably based both on the availability of the time slots and the availability of the learner and what kind of a meeting you negotiate, as well as, whether or not they need support in Moodle. If they need support in Moodle, they may even email you and say, hey, I can't do this until we meet. Can we get a quick meeting here so that you can support me with even just getting started? So, and having compassion for the variability in these situations and keeping maybe even some notes so that you know what's going on with the various learners. So you maybe, when we get to the CAT section, we'll talk more about what to do there. But I just think having compassion for the wide variety of situations you're likely to run into is going to be important.
Okay, my question was just because sometimes I've had issues with learners that are dumping assignments, and I just liked the mentor check-in that they couldn't carry on in the course until they talked to me, because I've had to send some students back to redo the work because it was plagiarized. So if they're getting too far ahead into the course because they've already done the first activating courses and then they're just carrying on, that was my concern.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that now your welcome letter is kind of the go-to place for expressing concerns around that, although, I hear what you're saying, that might happen, and I don't know how I would address that, except for just work with it in the situation, see what you can come up with, and we'll work with what we have in terms of how the courses are structured now, and we'll get a feel for it. There'll probably be some pieces that don't work as well as other pieces, and we'll just continue to develop and work on our courses.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, let's move into our last question. Malcolm had his hand up. And then I think if there's more questions around this piece, we could maybe hold them till the end of the day so we can let Kat do their piece. And then at the end, I'm hoping to have questions and comments and some banter as we close things up. Okay, so Malcolm, and then, yeah.
Hi, thanks. So this is moving pretty fast for me, and I have a meet and greet in 2 hours, so I just want to make sure I get it right. So what I'm getting from this is that the learners start by doing their activation agreement. That does not involve us. And then after that, it's kind of up to them a little bit. They can do the meet and greet and then the assignments in the meet and greet, but we don't have any marking to do prior to that time, right? Like we don't, I guess is a question of when we need to start marking. And the other piece is this 3 weeks. Are we saying that they have to work up to the learning point within 3 weeks?
Yes, they have to get up to that learning checkpoint in 3 weeks. Yeah, you will be marking assignments that come in before the learning checkpoint.
I just meant when I would, if I need to start marking those assignments before the learning checkpoint is reached.
In most courses, I mean, it'll depend on the restrictions that are set in the courses, and sometimes there are different restrictions. Very rarely are there restrictions on the learning checkpoint, though, and so generally a learner would be able to complete all of the assignments up to the learning checkpoint without you grading them, and then do the learning checkpoint without it being graded, and then continue on into the course without it being graded if they wanted to. And maybe this answer to John's earlier question is that maybe the learning checkpoint in his course, I'm not sure if we have a separate course, because I think you may be referring to international learners more than other learners, and I'm not sure, but maybe that learning checkpoint could be restricted based on the first 3 being completed and graded. But that would be a question that we'd probably have to run through leadership and Mark. And so I think English 10 might be set up that way already anyway. So But
last question. The meet and greet document, will that be the same document as I've been using that I can from last year, or is there a new meet and greet document?
Yeah, it is a new meet and greet document. Previously, the meet and greet documents were linked at the start of the course, and now there's a different meet and greet document. The document isn't linked, but I think I provided it in chat earlier, and I can provide it again for you if you like, and then just copy and paste it to chat. And I recommend that you let's see here, where is it? That you bookmark it. Let's see, meet and greets. Where's that meet and greet document? Here it is. So yeah, so what you want to do is you want to make a copy of this, Malcolm, and then rename it with the learner's name on it.
Great.
And here's the link right here.
Sarah, if it's okay, I'd just like to make a small point of, okay, thanks. So one is I see Heather's concern in terms of the speed and the 3 weeks, but I do want to go back in terms of the assessment piece, because if you'll remember back to the audit, before we apply for funding, one of the requirements is that the mentor does have to be giving the learner feedback on the work that they've been doing. The learner has to be engaged in that feedback. That's part of the requirement. So the way that things have been set up is that they are addressing, that 5%, or they're addressing those learning standards. And in doing that, the mentor is giving feedback, because those things are required in order for us to then say, okay, now we're ready to get some money. So it doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be, really in-depth feedback, but they need, that needs to be part of it. So I just want to underline that. We can't, kind of wait to do that marking. And in terms of what Heather's saying, in terms of the speed, remember, and we talked about this last year, I think during mentor orientation, spirit of the guideline. So Heather, if you have learners that are actively engaged, and this is, merely, they're actively going, and they can't get there, that doesn't happen all the time, but of course that's okay. We're talking about sometimes kids are in courses 3, 4, 5 months and they haven't activated. That's what we're really, focused on here. So if somebody takes, 4 or 5 weeks to activate, that's okay. We need to support that. And if they're engaged and they're actively, moving forward, and you see movement in the course, we're talking about, the majority of people, or this conversation is about kids that linger in courses, they're not doing things, and, and they're not going to engage. And the mentor spending all of this time. So I think this is a great segue into CAT, but I just wanted to especially talk about that assessment piece, because it is kind of key. So thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. Though all really important pieces there. And as just a bit of a sigh of relief to everyone, please remind yourself that the Educator Guide has all of this information. We've spent so much time compiling it and making lists and plans and templates for all of you to follow this year. And that is where to start. So familiarize yourself with that material. And then the second piece is that your cohort lead is there to support you as well. So if you are feeling like you are not sure of the order, contact your cohort lead. They are there for you. And if you feel like the learner mentor check-in is not in a good place in the course, double check, because we've actually switched them to be up in a lot of courses. So it's different than last year. And yeah, let's keep this communication going. And we do want you all to feel like these changes are positive changes as we transition into September. So thanks for the amazing feedback and questions. And I'd like to pass the baton back to Vanessa and our CAT team now for the last big piece of our morning.
Thanks a lot, everyone. These are fantastic questions, and we'll get into some of the answers here. Keeping in mind, too, that some of what we're about to hear is actually going to be a trial. And we really are going to have to hang on to the spirit of the thing for a bit as we move into it, because this shift is reflecting a few things. And in a minute, I'm gonna invite in the rest of my my litter. And I'll just introduce them now, though, just so we know. So I've been working with Kat in 10 to 12, and we've also had Kat in K to 9, and we've also had Kat in SE. Now we have Clarissa, who is Clarissa Tufts, who's waving, who is our program coordinator for K to 12 Kat. We saw this. We, as the Broad Royal We organizational we, saw this as a place where coherence is obvious. It's obvious that we work in CAT with the same kind of gesture, with the same kind of supportive, relational working. The processes will look different, but we're trying to bring those closer together. But this is one place where we could really bring that coherence piece in. So Clarissa is our gal for that. She is the mama kitty in this whole arrangement here. And Todd's here. Give us a little wave, Todd, with his awesome beard. And so Todd's been doing K to 9 CAT closely alongside Clarissa for several years now, a few years anyway, yeah. And so so Todd's here, of course, in his role there, as well as to bring what K to 9 is doing closer to what we're doing, and so on. And then we have Carrie Watson here. Carrie, are you on camera? Wait, are you on my other screen? Carrie's here too, somewhere. Maybe you just want to say hi, Carrie. Where are you?
Oh, Carrie has a sleeping baby. She just sent me a note. So she is
okay,
here.
awesome.
She has to be quiet and
okay, awesome.
Can't let her hear us either.
Okay, great. And last but not least, Amber Thompson is here. She is the one who is going to be receiving all of the CAT forms, new word, that you submit this year in 10 to 12. And so, yeah, Amber is working very intimately with 10 to 12 CAT this year, as she was last year alongside Sharon. But Sharon is going to be working with us a little bit less time this year. So Amber's moving fully into this realm. So that's the group and the people that have arrived for this, especially for this section.
And Darcy, because you might not see the chat, Vanessa. So just a reminder that Darcy's here too.
Darcy. Hi, Darcy. Thanks for waving. And there's Darcy, too, who has been working in K to 9 CAT as well. So we're new to each other. Our little, we're like a bunch of orphaned kitties who have all come together and are attaching ourselves to Clarissa as our guide. And we're all trying to, begin to form what is going to be this K to 12 look. And of course, with some immediacy, because this orientation was happening this week, we focused, especially a smaller group of us, focused quite closely on, okay, what are we doing with 10 to 12 CAT this year, and how are we going to get our processes specifically related to this new shortened activation window better in line, more useful for mentors, and all of that. So we did a little meeting this weekend for sure. We did some kind of midnight hour stuff last night, and we're still working on it. So, but there are some new things I'm going to share with you right now, and maybe some of you have seen them already. So as you said, there is in your video that you've seen about, or haven't seen yet, but will watch, about your new spreadsheet, there is some reference in there to that what will appear on your spreadsheet is the start date. And there is some ability for you as mentor to affect that start date. But from that start date for 3 weeks is this window we're looking at. Now, I appreciate, Heather, that you brought this up, because suddenly 3 weeks after we've had this kind of much looser, not intentionally, but it has by practice been a sort of a looser time frame, all of a sudden we're like, whoa, okay, 3 weeks. But I, for one, I'm quite stoked about it, because as a mentor, I want to get into the part where I really am doing the work I like to do. This part almost makes me, I don't know, something. I was going to choose the word vomit, but it's a bit extreme. But I really don't like it. Like, I really don't like that first part where I'm just doing too much of that. So, so now, if maybe I'll just screen share for the recording, and David's not even here to prompt me, but I remembered all on my own. I'll screen share this document that isn't perfect, but it has the cat at the top in case you're looking to reference it. Just one sec, get there. So
does everyone know what CAT stands for? Just curious. Maybe everyone does.
Skill testing question.
I always thought it was just that Clarissa liked cats a lot, but I think I heard there was more.
I can't watch the chat at the same time, so any guesses will have to be registered there, and someone will say when they're right.
Yes, Sue Steele came in with the answer. Contact assistance team, thanks. Or courageous, amazing team came in with the good second for Amber.
So here we have a learner, and they're in their first 3 weeks of the course. We may or may not have met up with them yet, but they're still in that first 3 weeks of the course. If they're cruising along, you're noticing that they're submitting assignments, likely they're not someone who is going to fall into this category. If you've had your meet and greet with them already, especially, you've gone over what the activation agreements are, you've gone over how important it is to be doing this work and beginning to engage and continuing to engage in their coursework regularly, and you've done all of this through lots of curiosity and supportive relationship building conversation with the learner. So if they're rolling along, they're rolling along, and this process isn't going to kick in. But if they're not quite rolling along yet, here are the different things that are going to happen this year. So if after that first week, after the meet and greet happens with you, you're not noticing any activity from this learner. If this learner is in our regular program, meaning they don't even have a GM, they don't have an SEC or high C, you are going to reach out to them via email, and you're just going to say, hey, remember when we chatted? We had this little chat about the activation agreement. It's now 1 week. In order to keep yourself on pace with your activation agreement, here's what needs to happen, that kind of thing. And you're going to put that in the weekly contact that you had with that learner in your spreadsheet. Now, if this learner is in the SE side of things, and you'll notice that there's that on your spreadsheet, or you'll also notice that there's a name of the SEC or high C on your spreadsheet, or the GM. If the learner falls into any of those categories, you're also going to copy those people on that first email. So this is kind of, whether or not some of you did this last year, some of you I think did, or maybe not consistently or whatever, but this year, if we're bringing in those people right away, now we have a team. Now there's you, the mentor, plus their SEC or high C, and or the GM, who are also getting curious. Hey, what's happening? How can we help? To get you kind of rolling. So this is only 1 week in now, and we still have 2 weeks for the most part. And again, spirit of the rule. Even if they get started, even if it takes them 3 weeks from there, if they're active and engaged, oh well, that's okay, right? So we're getting these people involved right away. So SECs and high Cs, this is new for you. This is us as mentors saying, hey, can you help me out here with this learner? Do you have any information that could help me? Is there anything that you can do on your end? Can you help that learner prioritize this work over that? Because that's the support we're providing them through these other roles as support consultants and as GMs. So that's built in right away. Then, if they're still not active, the second week after the meet and greet, you still, despite the fact that you've called in other people or sent them an email, you're still not getting anything, now we're going to call them. And we are for sure going to use this step 100% of the time this year. Because I know, and I say it as a reminder to myself too, that sometimes I go, oh, I'm not really in a quiet space to call that learner this week. I think I'll just send them another email. And we're not going to do that this year. This year we are going to follow the email, then follow up with a phone call, because I found that almost 99% of the time that I made the phone call, action happened right away, because either I got a parent on the phone or I got to speak directly to the learner and build more relationship and understand their situation better. So let's do that. Now we also let the SEC High C or GM know that we've made a phone call too. And they're continuing to be active in the process of helping us get this learner to activation. So this team is still fully in operation. Then we move on to the next step. If we don't hear anything from them, now we're in a situation where at the end of week 3, and you'll see these different features when you watch that spreadsheet video. This is all automated in your spreadsheets. Things will change colors and so on, so that you'll be helped with this final date too. And here's where we're going to submit a CAT form. And you heard the word form, because this is a brand new feature. And this form that's linked here is a sample. I don't think you can use this form. Anyways, this is a sample. We're still working out a few final details, but once it's actually fully developed, this form will link to all the relevant places, and we'll make sure you know exactly where to find it. So the reason we shifted to the form is because the form actually collects all the cases, all of the responses in one spot, whereas the SRS, the ticket system we were using before, just couldn't adequately organize it. We explored that a lot last year. It couldn't adequately organize it for us in that way, and in such a way where several team members could come in and look at one place and have a common language, you know, by sharing different colors and highlights and things like that, in order to make sure we're really tracking this learner well. I'm totally not watching the chat box, so I'm just going to pause here for a minute in case there's a relevant question.
Thanks, Vanessa. I've got a little backlog here. So we've got Miguel first, and then Dan has a question about what exactly is the start date? How are we defining that? So we'll start with Miguel, though. Miguel, go ahead. Miguel, do we still have you?
Yes, you have me. I was just changing rooms, but if there's another question, you can give another person the question, and I'll be right back.
Perfect. Yeah, why don't we start with Dan's question then, Vanessa? What exactly are we defining as a start date?
Dan, have you watched the spreadsheet video yet?
I just have to unmute him apparently. Hold on.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, yeah. Yeah, I'm clicking on buttons and then they just kind of flash and they're not working. And then after a while they work, which is sort of weird. I might have to update my Zoom, or I thought I did, but anyway, maybe I need to reinstall it. My question is, I'm noticing that the way it's listed here, the way it's written here is first week after meet and greet, mentor contacts the learner by email, and there's 3 weeks before the CAT. But from what I understood, and I could be wrong on this, and I just want to get clear, is that because I thought the way that I understood it was that within that first 3 weeks they had to have all of the assignments done up to the learning checkpoint, and they had to meet with you, but it could be in pretty much any order. It might take them a week to meet with you. It might take them 2 weeks to meet with you, but they'll have started on those activation activities, and they will have everything completed within that first 3 weeks. Because if it's this way, then it might take 2 weeks for them to meet with you, and then it might take them another 3 weeks to finish the activation activities. So that's my question.
Yeah, it's a great question, Dan. I thought about that when I put this in here. The start date is movable in that way. So, or actually, Paul, can you jump in here for a sec? I'm trying to remember now if that's actually one of the frozen columns. Is it the registration date that's going to go in there?
Yeah, in the video it says the start date. Admin, when they create it, they'll just put the date they're adding the learner to the course, but mentors can come in and change that start date. For example, somebody's signing up for a workshop that doesn't start for another 4 weeks. they'll put in the workshop start date in, say September the 6th or October the 6th or whatever. So that will make all the numbers work.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Paul, for that reminder. So in this case, some learners, if a learner is already, they're allowed into the course and they're starting working on that first section, then likely they're going to come in within that 3 weeks anyway, because they're just jumping in there and getting going. Some learners feel like they will only begin once they meet with you. It's up to you. Like I kind of feel like the meet and greet, for me, the meet and greet is that kind of beginning moment. And hey, yeah, like we've talked about this now. We've made this activation agreement now. You understand what the 3 weeks is all about. And now you have that 3 weeks. Yeah, it can be either one. As I say, the start date, if they're already rolling, will be fine because they'll be done within 3 weeks. So kind of up to you in that way if you want to switch it. If you meet and greet with them later and you feel like they need that 3 weeks, start the 3 weeks then.
Well, that makes perfect sense. Thanks, Vanessa.
Okay, great.
I just want to ask Paul to come in because I'm not sure it's super easy to change the start date because that's in the planner. So I want clarification on there so it's not.
Can I just jump in, Michelle? The start date that's in the planner doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
To this 3 week process.
Okay.
Because they can be in there for not for a much longer period of time than we're saying. The start date, if it's a week or 2 or 3 off earlier than what we've said here, doesn't really matter. We're just saying, when does this 3 weekness kick in?
So Vanessa, when we're taking the meet and greet as the start date, we'll want to change the start date in our spreadsheets, right?
You don't have to. Oh, sorry, in your spreadsheet. Yeah, so I was back on the planner thing. Yes, because that will trigger the 3 week later cell to turn the correct color as it's supposed to. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And we've got a hand from Travis as well.
Just wanted to make sure that I was following this 3 week thing fully. So my understanding has been with like my most recent activations that I've done is that the learner agrees to have the activation assignment or the assignments leading up to the learning checkpoint completed within those first 3 weeks. Okay, so that's good to hear. And so if they don't have it done by that time, what I would do is I would email the learner and their GM or their SEC or high C.
In week 1?
Yeah. Well, starting like the first week after that 3 weeks, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
No, not the first week after that 3 weeks. The first week after the start date. You're sending that email and you're saying, hey, we're already a week into your activation agreement. Here's where we're at. You're copying those other people so that they're fully supported to get to the activation point within the 3 weeks.
Okay. All right.
Vanessa, can you screen share a spreadsheet so we see, because there's a registration date, there's an activation date, and there's a whatever. I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, and then the second week, if still nothing, and then second week, if still nothing is submitted, then we would then make the phone call home, and then the third week we would file a CAD ticket. But I mean, this is assuming that this is kind of assuming that the first topic in the course can be completed within a week's time. And some people may need a little more time than that. So, I mean, this is up to mentor discretion, right?
Yeah, it's up to mentor discretion. And I say that in a kind of, like I'm almost just sort of squeaking it out because there is again, back to the spirit of the rule thing. Mentor discretion doesn't mean, I know this kid can do it. A month later, I know that they can because, they sent me this cute cartoon of their cat, so I know that they're in touch with me. And 2 months later, they probably had just a Christmas break. 3 months later, do you know what I mean? So mentor discretion is a piece of it, but actually the 3 week activation period is the 3 week activation period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're firming that up because as I said already, this process actually isn't any different than we outlined last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's really no different. But this year we're totally using it.
Mm-hmm.
We're totally going to use it this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I guess that's the key difference that I want to say here. And you'll be super supported to use it by all of the people that are listed there and by the CAT team. She's
That's
redundant.
awesome. Thanks, Vanessa. We also have Sue Steele here with her hand up.
You there, Stu?
Happily on mute. Vanessa, I might not be understanding this spreadsheet completely, but I wonder if it might be an idea to have another column just to the left of column G that says contacted SEC. Because for a learner in the SE program, before you send the CAT, you're going to contact the SEC.
I think I just heard Paul faint at the point where you said add a column.
Oh, can you hear me now?
No, I heard you, Sue. It's great. I appreciate that suggestion.
You know, as a reminder for if they are in an SE program, you're not going to send a CAT ticket first.
Yeah, that's why those steps. That's why that step is there.
Where?
In the let me just go back to that.
Like it seems to me that it should be another column just to the left of column G.
Yeah, so I'm just going to say we can't add columns at this point. I can't seem to get back to my other sheet right now. But the first step that every mentor is going to do after week 1, if they have an SE learner, is they're going to include the SEC or High C into the email that they send to the learner to say, hey, notice that you're not doing your first assignment yet. I'm here to support. Copy to the SEC, High C, that those people get involved and say, hey, it looks like your mentor's trying to work with you to get going. So that step is in there.
And you wouldn't want to have that documented on this sheet, the timestamp?
I wouldn't want to make another 45 mentor spreadsheets. No. It is a big step, Sue, but given that we've got it in the process, I'm happy for it to be there. If we can't manage it in that process in the future, we can add it in a column.
Yeah, for your template for next year, I'd recommend adding that in there.
Yeah, if we end up not being able to follow the steps, then we can support mentors by putting that reminder in there. But I have a feeling everyone here will be able to follow those steps really well.
Great.
Thanks, Sue, and thanks, Vanessa. I'm seeing that we are sort of getting towards the end of this conversation, and I'm not sure how much more Vanessa has to share. There are 3 more questions, though, Miguel, Mark, and Malcolm. So, Vanessa, you can kind of approach those as you'd like. Maybe you want to hold those off till the end, or maybe you want to deal with them now. I know Miguel did have his hand up at the beginning.
Yeah, let's just go with them now and use the question time today for that. We can field up questions tomorrow. Yeah.
Thanks. So Miguel, Mark, and Malcolm.
I think I will be quick. I just want to make sure that I understood the process. So as a mentor, I'm trying to get a hold of the learner. It doesn't happen first week, second week. If I get a hold of him in the 2 weeks after I get the first welcome email, I get a hold of them and I meet and greet them, I can change, or in fact, I must change the start date in the spreadsheet to the day in which I meet them. Is that what we need to do?
Yeah, you could use it that way for sure, because really that reflects when that learner is starting their engagement with the course.
Mm-hmm. Because if I don't, they would only have like 1 week to actually activate the course, whereas if I change the start date, then they would actually have 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. And then as an SEC, I just wanted to voice a concern. I don't know if this is the way that it will be, but I want to voice it because it seems like, if part of the process includes contacting the SEC, which, from a logical point of view, it is great. What the mentor says, hey, SEC, what's happening with this learner? Do you have any information? But if every single mentor does that, while SECs are like full on trying to meet the families, composing an ILP, composing a budget, it's going to be quite overwhelming. Often I don't think that we will have a lot more information than the mentor. Like if, I mean, I don't know. I just see a big thing there of suddenly a lot of emails, mentors asking SECs for information and maybe not being able to cope. It is just a concern.
Yeah, this is where, thanks for that, Miguel. This is where we're definitely going to be trialing this. This process was already in place last year. I know that for me, I contacted SECs as soon as there was, I had questions or a contact issue with my learner. My sense is that the skookumness, if I can use that word, of the conversation and the activation agreement at the front end will really clarify with the learner what their agreement is to get going in the course when in that conversation that they're having with their mentor. So it won't be every case that after 1 week suddenly the SECs are flooded with this information, because what we're really trying to develop here is more capacity with the learners to really take up this agreement and understand why it's in place. So there's a fair bit of finger crossing here of us going, hopefully with the changes to the front end process, that will make it that we have to do less, kind of shoring up on the back end. But we will need to revisit it if what you are suggesting comes.
It's simply because many SE learners are slow, and if mentors get impatient because they're taking too long, they're not able to get a hold of them. SE learners are overwhelmed already with, perhaps in grade 10 to, when they're starting, I see a lot of things happening there, and 3 weeks is nothing, for an SE learner. It's like they may take a long time to get started. And
can I jump in at some point?
Mm-hmm. Go for it, Miriam.
I totally hear you, Miguel, and I think, this is the thing, like what Vanessa said, we're trying this, we're going to see how it works. I also think there's going to be a big difference between HIC and the learners that they support, and for some of the SECs who support learners with low incidence needs. SECs will be more swamped with more paperwork early in the year, and if they're working with a new learner, may know less about them and this academic piece and more about them on the SE side. So totally true. And in that case, I think the SEC can say, whoa, none of us is quite ready for this yet. Can we build 3 extra weeks into this process, please? Which I know is written into this document. And then on the HI side, typically those learners jump in raring to go in courses or their families, and we're keeping families involved too, right? We're not just talking to learners necessarily, we're often seeing parents, and that's usually how this stuff gets done. So I think just, someone mentioned, or I think Sarah keeps coming back to, let's all take a breath, right? So yeah, it's all new and there's a lot, and 3 weeks seems scary. On the other hand, we truly did have kids last year who should not have registered for a course in the first place. They just weren't ready to start. It hung in there for 5 months before they finally quit. And that's not fair for the mentor. So trying to find that middle ground with being supportive for the learners, but also being supportive for the mentors, not to have these dangling learners who really should just withdraw and take it when they're ready. And that can be supportive for them too, right? I think I'm just going to throw one little thing in is we do get families coming to us, especially in HI, from outside. Like at least half our learners have come from other schools, and they're used to registering for their whole year's courses all at once in the spring. So they come to us, they register for 8 courses, have no idea they're expected to be active in everything they register for with us. And so getting that message out there too. I know I keep harping on it with parents when I do intake, only register for what you're ready to start.
My hand is up. Can I jump in?
Go for it, Sue.
I'd like to talk to whoever, in terms of what Miriam just mentioned, having registered a learner for a couple of courses. Well, first of all, let me say we're working in low incidence to have the registration process be good so the learner doesn't register for 5 courses when they're only planning on starting on 1 or 2. And on that note, I'd really like to talk to whoever, I don't know if it's Sharon, who's ever in charge of that SC8 registration form, because I think that some additional information really needs to be added to that form for people with learners in the special ed program. And I think that that information could help to solve these kinds of problems.
there another question? Thanks, Sue, for that.
Yeah, I think I think I was up next, yeah. And it's just a comment, but I'm not sure if this is, tell me if this is accurate, Vanessa. It sounds to me like the transition, the crucial moment in the transition into this new practice is going to be the meet and greet. That we really make clear with the learner in the meet and greet that about this 3-week thing. Because I think if we fail to really make that point, then it's going to be hard for them to get it. So would that be accurate, Vanessa?
For sure. That's actually what I'm hoping. We'll just solve the whole problem.
Yeah, I think if we really take up this question in the meet and greet and really check with the learner that they understand this and look at the dates, then the chances of it actually clicking into practice are going to be much higher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and all the while that we do that, and I know that all of us will keep this in mind, but if we can keep this whole notion that, you know what, we don't get funding for you and we don't get paid for you and we don't, way away from the learner, of course, that we're having that conversation, and it's the spirit of them getting engaged, because we know that engagement and ongoing, regular, timely engagement equals more effective learning. That's the point we want to make sure is really clear to them. Them knowing the administrative processes that will follow, like, hey, if this doesn't happen, you will be asked to, by the contact assistance team, what might be up for you, and this is going to go. I won't be working with you as a mentor anymore during that time. So them knowing those things, I think, is important, so they're not surprised. But we'll just make sure that all of our language is always focused on, hey, we really want you to engage because we know it's going to be more effective for you in the end.
I'd like to jump in if that's okay. I see the time, and I know many people are organizing the rest of their day so that they can have a quick break and jump into a very busy afternoon. I also do see 3 hands, Paul, Allison, and Michael. So what I'd like to do, if it's okay with everyone, is do a collective close right now and a brief chat about what tomorrow is going to bring. And then those of you who have hands, let's stay afterwards and see if we can answer them. And if something big comes out of that, we'll make sure that we share it with everyone else tomorrow, just to give some space for those that do have to leave. How does that sound, Vanessa?
That's good, Sarah. Thanks. Good facilitation.
Thanks, and thank you so much, Vanessa. It's a big piece to hold, and I know it's really, really lovely to see all these new faces as well, and there's so much support that happens behind the scenes here in our organization. So thanks to everyone who showed up today, both educators and support staff, right? There's a huge collection of us today. So here we go. Woohoo! First day, under the belt. Why don't we just take one more breath? Because I know we bounced back and forth all day long, and it's about transitions, and here we go, transitioning into our afternoons, whatever that entails. So just close your eyes and exhale out all of your air right to the base, even past what you think is the end. Can you go further? Whatever you're harboring, let that go. And then the biggest inhale of your day yet, from the belly to the ribs to the chest, right to the top. And a slow exhale all the way out. Good. And as you open your eyes, we can remind ourselves that tomorrow, 8:30, doors are open for guests to walk in. And the link is in your agenda. There's also a link beneath that into a Google Doc. So those of you who've taken the quiz, which is over 20 of you now, which is great, thank you. If you haven't taken the quiz, fill it out, because tomorrow morning I'm pulling people's responses, plugging them into the Google Doc, and you guys all have to guess who did what. So that's another fun portion to remind you of. If I'm missing anything, Mark or Allison, please jump in. There's pre-reads, so if you're confused with stuff we were talking about today, check out those pre-reads.
Thank you, Sarah. Awesome holding of the space for our startup. That's great.
Perfect.
Yes, and thanks for everyone who put so much into a thoughtful agenda. So beautifully laid out, such a nice rhythm, and and really appreciate all the work that went into it. Excellent. Thank you so much.
So whoever's hosting the meeting, if you can leave this meeting space open, for anyone who wants to stay and ask a few more questions. I can be here for a little bit longer.
Perfect, and I will as well since I'm hosting. And we can go back to even that list. I did write it up here. I already forget. I think it was Allison, Paul, and Malcolm. If you still have
to make a statement.
Go ahead.
Michael, bye, Michael. Oh no, he's staying.
Bye to anyone that has to leave.
Paul, did you just want to make your statement?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it was basically just putting that 3 weeks in perspective. If a learner takes the full 3 weeks to do that first Activate part of the course, that work, and basically they're on a 60-week to completion timeline. So they're moving pretty slowly to get to do that first activation stuff in 3 weeks. A more realistic is it's probably about a week's work in reality. I mean, even if they take 2 weeks, that's still a 40-week timeline for course completion. So, you know, the 3 weeks for most learners, it should actually be at least 2 or 3 times the amount of time they actually need to get it done. Just putting that out there to sort of try and keep it real.
Yeah, and this for me, you know, we are trying out all this stuff, and we have this tension of wanting to try and, because we know that we've seen more success when learners, for the majority, are supported to start and finish within a session frame. And yet, as Michael raised this, it is true, the startup can be, that's pretty intense for some. So one thing is, if you have a GM, hopefully some of these conversations preparing learners and families about this intense time at the beginning will help. And as we get better at that, communicating with families that be ready, it is intense, but you know, the mechanisms and support are there for you. And then things will relax. Because if we just leave it open to staggering all the start dates again, then it gets us back down a path where we would see less actual completion and all of that. But when we can start, and also it enables pod kind of activity as well, I'll say. But it is learning, figuring out to make sure the learners and families really understand this as it is a busy time, to be smart about the choices of courses that they choose. Because some might, you know, maybe some are a happy place and some are a place that brings up anxiety or worries. And so trying to really be smart and have as much conversation beforehand as possible to make the best combinations of courses to start. So yeah, we'll try and figure this out. And the more the GM is in there, or the SEC or the High C, or to help families and as LCs understand this too, to help the families be ready and ask for the support they need. I think the better these processes will go. Yeah.
Love it. Go ahead, Michelle.
I think especially at this time of year, yeah, that's what we need to remember, that and I think once we move past, you know, say for example, even the end of September, then that's kind of, I think, where we really lean into even more so that 3-week parameter, because, you know, we need to, yes, Michael, that's what I was thinking. That's why I was waiting. But, you know, we need to make sure that we're supporting everyone here. And even like Vanessa said, even though that this was in place last year, we did still see, you know, it's hard to sometimes use it. And so I think sometimes even it's just for ourselves to get over the notion that asking for that CAT assistance, that it's not okay, you know, like, so we need to move away from thinking it's a ticket or someone's done something wrong. It could be something really simple that we as a mentor can't figure out, but someone from CAT goes in there and supports them, and bang, they're off to the races, you know, like, so I think that we just need to think that at every way, a learner never, you know, we don't want to make them feel like it might not be the right time for a course, it might not be the right course. We're just trying to help them figure out, but not have the mentor carry that burden of finding out what that reason is. So, yeah.
Well said, Michelle.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Michelle, because I always had that air of feeling like I failed at a certain point when I had to submit the CAT request, right? It was like, I couldn't do it. And so I resorted to this. So I appreciate you saying that part of the process.
That might even be one to reiterate at some point tomorrow or throughout the week, because yeah, it's really sinking in for me right now too. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know Michael's had his hand up on deck there for a bit too, Michael.
Yeah, here's my question, and is it in the registration process? Do we have this 3-week activation expectation in there? So they are going to be seeing that. It's not in a big long list of things that.
I think it used to be almost, Michael, right at the very top, it said, please remember to register only for courses you're going to start within the next 3 weeks. I'll go back again.
Okay.
It's been, but I'm pretty sure like last year that basically, because we used to have kids registering, I don't remember in the days, but 12 courses off the top, or whatever the maximum was they could. So it says it right there. It shouldn't be a surprise. And I think it's happening less and less. So I just, I just think it's a good point though. Like just every place that we say it, we're building a culture here, and I think I can see the impact and I can see the effect it's having for sure.
Yeah, we're not the first people that they've talked to by the time they get to us. And a lot of the information out there is pretty loosey-goosey in the expectations. I hear people say, I thought I could do this anytime. I thought I could wait as long as I could. I thought I could take as long as I needed to take. Those are stories that they come to the courses, to registration with. So the more that we can change or at least address that all the way along, not just when we meet and greet, because by then they've already signed up for 5 courses and they thought they were going to be able to start it whenever. But as many times as they can see that message, it does help us.
Yeah, that's very true. Anything else at this point?
Yeah, Heather has her hand up as well.
Heather, okay. Great.
Just a very practical question, like today I have to do CAT things. Where am I going to do that? Am I going to the same old support request system, or when does this start?
Yeah, keep on going until we tell you to go somewhere else and shut that down. So we'll physically shut down the avenue to the other system when this one is completely ready to go. Right, Amber? Right. Yeah. Okay. So we just have a little more tweaking to do on the form. It literally was birthed this weekend. And it's really going to help us behind the scenes a lot. But for now, just keep on the path you were on.
So I just want to, because I want to understand, 'cause like you said, it's just emerged over the weekend. So we've got that CAT form, but still, like, I guess I'm not quite sure what the intersection between the support request and the CAT form is. Can you help me delineate those two, Vanessa, just so I can keep them clear in my mind?
So CAT will no longer be in the support request system, but everything else will be still. So if you have an IT issue, go there, all the other things you went there for.
Okay, so all contractors that are working with learners and families will now use this CAT form, but for other things, but that's the only thing that's being removed from the support request. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the K-9 and SE folks already had their own avenues that did this same thing. We're just joining in. None of us really, for the most part, the SE CAT that was sometimes used this year by mentors often was used just because the learner was SE, but we really weren't supposed to be going through SE CAT. So that avenue was already one that needed to be that door needed to be closed a bit. Really, the SE CAT is for the use of SECs and high Cs. As mentors, we're always going to be going to 10 to 12 CAT and using this form. They'll, behind the scenes, Amber and Carrie will work out if it's an SE issue or what or not, or, that kind of thing. But just know this form will be 10 to 12 CAT.
Any other questions?
Super hungry.
Me too.
Me too. You guys have been working hard since early. Let's go. Let's go eat. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. See you tomorrow.
See you
See you tomorrow.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.